It is an absolutely beautiful morning in Cape Town, mid-January 2018, and today's going to be a scorcher, getting ready with a cup of coffee. So this was the week of Donald Trump's comments about certain nations being S-holes. I won't use the swear word here, but I'll put a link in the show notes to the little scandal that broke out. There was a meeting apparently in the White House, and Donald Trump, speaking on immigration, was asking, why do people from Haiti and Africa and El Salvador, which are S-hole nations, want to come to the United States? Why can't they rather get people from Denmark? Now, of course, that betrays Donald Trump's own racist sentiments. But that comment just struck me again, how important it is that we, as Christians particularly, develop a primary understanding of the dignity of all human persons. So when we begin with an understanding that all persons have value, that their dignity is given to them not by where they come from or what they can contribute to an economy. In other words, we're not basing it on a capabilities approach. We come to understand that every person has value. See, the problem with the kind of approach that Donald Trump is advocating is that it places the burden of proof of the dignity of a person, particularly on those who are least able to meet what society regards as valuable or normal. For example, children or the elderly who cannot contribute to the economy as a younger or a middle-aged person may be able to contribute, or someone who is differently able or has a mental disability. Those persons' dignity will be called into question if you take Donald Trump's particular view of the human person. And so it struck me again just how important it is that we need some kind of reference point that helps us to understand that our dignity is not dependent upon what we can contribute, it's not dependent upon what we can do, it's not dependent on our beauty or our strength or our intellect or our geographical location, Mr. Trump. Our dignity comes from another source, a far more important source than any of those things. So what is the source from which our dignity comes? Well, two people have influenced my thinking on this particularly. The first of them is the African philosopher and political theorist and activist Steve Biko. And Biko's understanding was that the dignity and the identity of the human person comes from their humanity, our shared humanity. The fact that we are human gives us our dignity. But another person's thinking has influenced me greatly, and that's the work of Stanley Hauerwas. And Hauerwas says, along the lines of Jürgen Moltmann and Karl Barth and others, that as Christians, our dignity comes from the God who has his claim on us. In other words, the fact that we have value is not because of who we are, but because of who the God is that created us and claimed us to be his. And Stanley Hauerwas says it in a particularly humorous way. He says the fact that God chose to become human in the incarnation through Christ means that God places a very special emphasis and claim upon humanity. And so we derive, as a human person, as a member of the human race, we derive our dignity from the fact that God claims us. And Hauerwas has this wonderful way of talking about human persons. He calls us a storied people. And he says, at the end of the day, when we think about it, in terms of being a storied people, the interesting thing is that it has much less to do with us and much more to do with the God who is the author of the story. And so our dignity isn't derived from the part that we play in the plot of life's story, but our dignity is derived from the fact that we are included in God's story, that God writes us into the story, and that we have an important part to play, that each of us is a player in the story that God is writing for the world. So maybe today I can invite you to think a little bit about how you judge the value of yourself and of other persons. Maybe subtly, and I think all of us have done this at times, we have bought into what Donald Trump expressed so clearly, that the value and dignity of a human person is somehow based on what they can contribute to us or society or the world. And we've come to value the contributions in monetary and economic and political terms. So maybe we need to interrogate that a little bit and think, what is the dignity and value of the human persons? How do we treat people with kindness, with respect, with grace? How do we celebrate their difference and their goodness in a world which seems to want us only to celebrate people's value in terms of their economic output, their strength, their beauty, and their intellect? So remember, this is not a lecture, it's just a thought, and I'd love to hear your ideas, your feedback, what you think about this, and particularly if you're born in one of the S-hole countries like me. I'm proudly, wholeheartedly, and thankfully an African. I said on Twitter, I couldn't choose to be born in Africa. I guess I just got lucky, and someone needs to tell Mr. Trump that. So whilst he may not recognize the value of my humanity, I recognize his, and my prayer is that in his era he will be treated with grace, because history will judge these kinds of statements unkindly. And I pray that as Christians we recognize no person is irredeemable, not even someone who does not recognize our identity. So leave a comment in the show notes, connect with me on Twitter at Digital Dion, or on Instagram, YouTube, Dion Forster, or on my website, dionforster.com, and I'd love to hear from you. So thanks for watching. Have an absolutely stunning day. I'm going for a run in a short little while, just to get a bit of exercise in, and on Monday, it's back to work. Thanks for watching.